Good evening and welcome to JW3. We're delighted to see so many of you here this evening for the How They Made It Through series. If you've never been here before, JW3 is a one-of-a-kind community centre in the UK. Welcome to everyone. If you have been here before, welcome back. Things are a bit different, but we're delighted to see you here and in person. And if you're online, hello. Hope you're having a good time on your couch under a blanket with some hot chocolate. We hope to see you in person soon, right here, when it's possible. Tonight we're launching the How They Made It Through series, exploring how Jewish entrepreneurs over here have survived this pandemic and responded with their businesses with resilience, flexibility, and pivoting in a way to continue and to thrive in a world that's constantly changing. This series is generously supported by the Genesis Philanthropy Group, and it's really important to me and JW3 that we're having open conversations about what it means to respond to a changing world. We are so excited to have Angelica Madden hosting this series for us. There's 2 more after this one. We're really glad to have her. I actually met Angelica in university when she was starting one of her first businesses, The Spoonfuls, which was a brilliant creative catering company offering, I think, what's called 4D literary dining experiences, which amazed me at the time. Now, she's the editor-in-chief of About Time magazine, founder of the About Time Academy, and recently released her first book, She Made It. It's really exciting to have her here this evening. I'm going to hand over to her to introduce herself and the panelists. Have a wonderful evening.
Hi everyone, good evening. I'm so excited to do an in-person event. This feels so thrilling. Yes, I met Joe when I was trying with my best friend to run a bakery, but we couldn't bake. And we learned that that was a fatal flaw in the business plan, so unfortunately that didn't quite work out. So tonight is all about businesses, entrepreneurship, and how we're navigating these times. And I know myself, running a lifestyle business, it's been an incredibly challenging time when you mainly write about things that are happening and going out and nobody's going out. So I know that in my business I've pivoted, and I'm really excited to hear about how other business owners have had to pivot. I'm going to hand over to allow you to introduce yourselves, because I think people always introduce themselves best. And for anyone watching on the live stream, there will be a Q&A at the end of the session. So I presume you can just add in your questions and we'll be answering them then. So first, coming to you, please can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yes, I am Josh White. I am co-founder and marketing director at Callow Water.
Hi, I'm Karen Cinnamon. I'm the founder of Smashing the Glass, which I'm proud to say is the world's biggest Jewish wedding platform. Founded it 7 years ago when I was planning my wedding and realized there was nothing, no magazines, blogs, Instagram accounts for a modern Jewish woman.
Hi, I'm James Grant. I'm co-founder of My Tutor. We're the UK's leading online tuition platform. We have 2 models. One is a tuition service for families, like a marketplace, an Airbnb for tutors. And the other is partnerships with schools to run tuition programs for disadvantaged students. And we've had an interesting 6 months, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Hi, I'm Gabby Hersham. I am the CEO of a company called Huckletree. So we are a workspace accelerator group. We do co-working space, education, acceleration for entrepreneurs and innovation businesses with spaces in London, Manchester, and Dublin.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Gabby, I'm going to come to you because I feel like you've just spoken, so I'm going to talk to you. I want to hear a little bit about how the idea came about for the business. There are a lot of co-working spaces at the time. How did it kind of crystallize?
So it's funny because I think we met right in the beginning in our very first space in Clerkenwell. I was actually living in New York at the time, and I came across this co-working concept, which was a novelty back then. I was working in the film industry, and I'd been working with my partner in his small apartment for a year. And we came across this concept, moved into this co-working space in New York, and I met so many people there that we actually did business with. So people who did the graphic design for the film, somebody that invested in the film that we were doing. And I just thought this is such an amazing idea. I had to move back to London for family reasons, and when I did, I kind of naively thought, I can do this. I've grown up in a household with 2 property entrepreneurs. I can figure it out in London. And I think just my first lesson as an entrepreneur was having that naivety to think you can do it really gets you going and not kind of worrying about it. So I did it, and it's grown since then.
Amazing. James, how did the idea come about for My Tutor?
So for me, it was a journey that started at university. So I think it started off with being pretty annoyed by student loans and student debt, and seeing university students as a great resource, experts in their subjects. And I was looking around for ways that they can kind of add value beyond sort of regular student jobs, so your bar jobs, your retail jobs, and discovered the world of tutoring. And it was this kind of unfair advantage, this elitist kind of industry that was reserved for those who can afford tuition. And equally, a lot of the tutors were kind of from these local agencies, retired teachers, people who weren't necessarily that similar to the people they were helping. And so the focus came from kind of discovering the spark that's created between university students who have just experienced exams and the people they're tutoring, so people who are going through it and going through the stresses. And there's only one way to really deliver that effectively, and that's online. So the concept kind of stemmed from there, deciding that I wanted to do an online tuition platform using university students as the supply side, and trying to bridge this equality, this disadvantage, we call it the attainment gap, between those who can afford tuition and those who can't, and that's where our school model came from.
Amazing. Karen, was yours similar in that there was a problem that you spotted and that kind of helped inspire the business?
Yeah, exactly. It came from personal experience. So I was a branding designer, ran my own business, and then got engaged mid-30s. Short engagement, 6 months or so, and I was excited to plan the wedding. But wherever I looked, there was some great wedding inspiration and advice, but nothing for me as like I say, a sort of go-getting career woman in London. I wanted all the Jewish traditions, but also something fun and stylish and something that was authentic to me. And so had that little idea, and I thought, okay, I was on maternity leave just after I got married, and I thought, I'm just going to start that little idea to keep my brain ticking on maternity leave, and I started a blog, £50, that's all it was, my startup costs. Bought a domain name and WordPress and just got started. Featured my brother's wedding as the first wedding because I had to start somewhere. I wanted to show real weddings where they incorporated beautiful Jewish traditions, but the couples made it personal to them. I think also I'd experienced one too many Jewish weddings where it felt like the same wedding every Sunday because I'm a creative type. I could put a creative spin on my wedding from my head, but some people need to see things and ideas. So I wanted to showcase lots of weddings, advice and guidance. So yeah, I started as a blog and then over the years grew on social media, and now we've got a private members club for brides, and so on and so forth.
Amazing. I always love hearing about businesses that's just started with a really simple concept and a kind of low startup cost, because I think it shows that you can do things in lots of different ways and you can just start, straight away. Josh, how did the idea for Can Water come about?
It's a bit of a weird one. So 3 best friends, we went to Thailand and just on a normal sort of holiday. Growing up I grew up in Radlett, and around there you don't see a lot of plastic pollution. It's not something. Sustainability is something that obviously I cared about growing up, but it wasn't something that was like a priority in my life. And yeah, 3 of us sort of came across a remote island and saw mountains and mountains of plastic bottles. Brands that we grew up loving. Evian, Coca-Cola. Brands that over the years have been marketed to us as incredible, friendly brands. And it was something that just sort of, shocked the 3 of us. And it was something that, why would we need to concentrate on something like this? And we just basically came home and was completely and utterly obsessed with what can we do to try and solve an issue. None of us had background in science where we could just create some form of compostable or biodegradable product. And doing a lot of research, we discovered that aluminium is infinitely recyclable. and 75% of all aluminium that was mined in the 1800s is just still in circulation. So every can that you drink from is essentially been hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cans, whereas only 9% of plastic bottles that have ever been produced have been recycled. So it was strange, you know, no one had ever put water in a can in the world, mainly because I think people thought that there might be a strange taste, or you can't see the water, or you can't close a can. And yeah, we basically, we all had full-time jobs, and we just, yeah, as I said, became obsessed. We created a brand before we even sort of knew that we could do it. And obviously, you speak about naivety, you know, we were so naive. I think if we knew what we were getting into, we probably wouldn't have started it, but that's what got us through it. And yeah, Can of Water was born in 2016, January, when we launched in Selfridges.
Fantastic. So I feel like lots of people have ideas for businesses, but it's those practical steps that are sometimes quite difficult. You don't know where to start, what to start with, what you should be spending money on, and what really matters, and how much market research to do. So I'd love to hear a little bit about the practical steps that you guys took to launch the businesses, and just any advice for anyone starting on what really was worth the time. So Gabby, with launching Huckletree, what were some of the practical stages?
So first of all, I completely agree that as a first-time entrepreneur, it's really hard to know what comes next, and like you say, where to be allocating the precious funds that you have. I was really fortunate at the time that I had my now husband, I had my brother, and they kind of knew a lot about the financial side of how to start a business, in the sense of what I would need to do to get myself ready for pitch meetings. But if I wouldn't have had that, I really wouldn't have known what to do and what the next step should be. So in terms of kind of practically speaking, looking back on it now, and it was like a 2-year process from idea in my head to opening the doors of our first space. But mind you, I had to go and raise, you know, quite a reasonable amount of money for someone that had never done that before, kind of, you know, 300K. It was just really about getting my investor materials ready, getting my kind of, you know, all of the financial models and the forecast and the cash flows, all of the financial things that I would need, but also my pitch book, and then just really being able to nail an incredible pitch. And I think I probably spent money on a couple of things that I just didn't need to spend money on in order to do that. And so the advice that I always give to entrepreneurs who are starting startups now is don't go and spend, I think I spent a lot of money. I spent a lot of money on branding. So useless. And the minute we launched, I changed all the branding.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is really hard to know for the first time what the next steps are.
Amazing. James, how about you?
So for me, I think the first thing I did was speak to the people that I thought would be my customer. And in a marketplace, particularly as a 3-sided marketplace, that meant speaking to a lot of my peers at university who might have done tuition in the past and had pain points or problems with it. It involves speaking to parents and understanding their struggles. So, you know, what do they feel about their child's education? Are they stressed by it? Are they helpless, anxious? What sort of solutions do they have at the moment? So lots of research. And from there, I guess, as a kind of founder with a small team, you do a bit of everything. So you're a generalist. You work on the product, you work on the marketing plan, you have to acquire a base of tutors, you have to do fundraising. And I was lucky because my first investors were incredibly supportive. They put a lot of belief in me at a time where I was a first-time entrepreneur, and I actually had a full-time job at the time. I was working at Barclays, doing kind of side-of-the-desk hustle. And so for me, there's definitely a bit of naivety, as has been said a few times, and I just always wanted to do something entrepreneurial. I was fortunate in that I had a business at university, an events business, that gave me some seed capital of my own. So before I raised money, I was able to invest some of my own funds, and that was pretty valuable. But there's loads of stuff you can do for free, sort of asking people who have been there, done that, started a business themselves, gone through their own pains and struggles, and you just make it up as you go along, really. Nowadays, I say nowadays as if I'm some old man, but nowadays you have some great structured playbooks. So like at the time, we had the Lean Startup as a book, which is a great way of kind of testing out different methodologies, and seeing what works. But you can now join networks like JW3, accelerators. I know that you put on regular events at your office spaces, and you just kind of learn from other people's mistakes, I guess.
Just quickly on the market research point, was there any kind of formal ways that you did that, or was that literally just by asking people about the idea?
So I never had a business plan. I think actually probably the best skill set that I tried to develop in the early days was learning how to ask good questions. Because a lot of people do market research and they ask very leading questions. So they'll ask someone something that basically almost confirms what you want to know. And it's really difficult to get not honest answers out of people you're speaking to, but a lot of people don't really know what they want. So you have to ask questions that basically lead them to understanding the pains that they go through rather than the solution they expect. So yeah, it was informal reading and understanding how to ask good questions.
It's very true about the questions, actually. On that note, I don't want to be too leading with my questions. I'd like to hear about the practical steps that you took to kind of build the brand and the blog, but also on the kind of commercial side. How did you decide how to commercialize it? Because there's so many avenues you could have gone in. How did that kind of process work?
So as I say, I started literally the blog I wish I'd had access to when I was planning my wedding, and I just put it out there and knocked up a logo. And the idea was, because it was a project on maternity leave, there was no pressure really. It was just to keep my brain ticking at that point. And then my goal with it was just to build up the content, build up an audience for a year, and then think about approaching advertisers. And then within 3 months, I was fortunate to have advertisers approaching me, because I think it just really grabbed, especially in America, there's such a large audience. And it just kind of, I had my first daughter 6 months into it, and then this blog was literally my other baby. I just wanted to grow it. It was really addictive, looking at all the stats, and online is such a great space to grow and have ideas. So the business model was really a publishing business model. So we're creating content, and then advertisers want to get in front of our audience. So it's about audience first, get that loyal audience, and then people will want to be part of it. We also work as an affiliate with affiliate links, but I think the sort of big turning point for my business was 5 years in. So I started this in 2013, and then 5 years in, obviously we've got monetizing through advertisers who are essentially wedding vendors, brands and services, but we've got an audience of 50, 60,000 readers every month who I was able to serve in a sort of generic way really through the content. But what if someone wanted pinpoint help with a particular issue, or wanted to connect with other brides, or just wanted to lean into their Jewish identity a bit in a deeper way? So I started a membership for brides, which, talking about everybody's launch process, that was more of a launch process than the blog, which I was just like, I'm just starting something. But the membership, to get people to hand over their credit card and pay you month after month for something that people think, I'll just plan a wedding, I don't necessarily need a membership. So that was a real process. And I could talk about that if you want me to later or now, whatever. But now the membership is 2 years old, and it's just been incredible for business, because you get to know your audience in a different way than you can get to know tens of thousands. And obviously, it's just led to other things like our lifestyle membership, and it just took it to another level rather than just publishing content and advertisers and brands.
Josh, can you tell me a little bit about, so you had the idea when you went on your trip, you came back, how did you actually get to the point of creating the product, and how long did that take?
So we all had full-time jobs. It isn't easy to put water in a can. We were told by quite a lot of people that it wasn't possible. So to give you the boring sort of part of it, a sparkling can of anything, is carbonated, whereas anything still, to get it into a can, it needs a shot of nitrogen. And a lot of packers don't do that for still water. So, we were told by many places across the world, you can't put water in cans. It's never been done before. There's also a taste profiling side where a lot of people who pack water or who would pack water were scared that there'll be a taste of Coke or energy drinks within the pipes. So anyone that was willing to pack water or can water was scared that there would be, a bad taste. So I think from the offset, we were told it's not possible. We just wouldn't take no as an answer. So we found someone eventually who would take a punt for us. It was quite a scary punt because in order to fill or print on cans, you need to print on 300,000 units. You can't just get one can, which was really, really scary. Probably would, cost north of probably about 60, 70 grand, which we didn't have. But, as I said, we wouldn't take no as an answer, so we tried to figure out a way. The maddest thing that we did, they said that they would send us 500 silver cans with sparkling lemongrass water in. So we couldn't get water, we couldn't get cans of water, but we basically got these silver cans sent to my house. We worked throughout the day at our full-time jobs, and then we would come back every night and we would spray paint the cans, we would wrap them, we would basically put masking tape on the top and we would spray them, and then we would wrap them with a can of water wrap, and we basically made 500 prototype cans of water. I think that it was launch was probably about 6 to 8 months, but it was, we had no idea what was sort of going to happen. For us, we needed investment. We didn't really know who to go to. We had no orders. My family and friends thought that we were absolute lunatics because who puts water in cans? We basically just sent 2 emails out. First ever emails. We created the most incredible brochure that was of a brand that didn't even exist. Just of all of our ideas. So that was basically our business plan, was just this brochure, because none of us had any experience of doing this. We were just passionate. And we sent 2 emails, one to Selfridges and then one to London Fashion Week, because that was at the time where we wanted to where we aspired to be. And within a week, London Fashion Week emailed us and said, if you ever get this off the ground, we want you to be the main sponsors of London Fashion Week. And then Selfridges, really, really weirdly enough, we got a call from the buyer who had just come from Harrods, and his first project was to remove plastic packaging, and we emailed him that week. So it was just, it all just sort of fit in. So looking back, that was actually the easiest part of the business. But from there, we raised some money from some angel investors, and that we all left our jobs and set off.
It's really just leading with the confidence and the passion, and then the other things kind of fell into place, as it were. And so I just want to touch quickly on clarity in business and kind of figuring out your business's unique identity, because I think one of the challenges now with people launching businesses is it feels like every marketplace is super saturated, and I think people feel put off from launching because they're like, how can I possibly stand out, and there's already so many competitors. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you can kind of create your own clarity and your own USP and your message. So Gabby, with the spaces, did you have that sense from the start of how you were going to be different from other players in the industry?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So in our first space, I was really adamant that our big USP was going to be, and not to say that it's not relevant because it's still super relevant, but our big USP at the time was going to be that our spaces were going to be the most sustainable co-working spaces in the UK. And we launched our first space, and it was officially the most sustainable co-working space in the UK. And the minute our doors opened, I realized that's great, and it's great to have that commitment, but actually what's bringing people in is not what paint is on the walls, it's who the other members are in the space. And so from that minute, we began turning away members that didn't fit the curation ethos of what we wanted to bring to our communities, which was innovation, entrepreneurs, startups, rather than HSBC's back office, let's say. And it's a really scary thing, turning away revenue when it's at your door and you've got rent and overheads to pay, but we did it. And that's always been our key differentiator in a really saturated market, because the co-working market is super saturated, is that we very specifically target the tech and innovation ecosystem. And within that, you have startups, scale-ups, corporate innovation, venture capital funds, service providers, but you won't see people in our spaces who don't participate in that. And that has continued to be our biggest differentiator and the reason why I genuinely think we are the most exciting workspace in the UK.
It's amazing. So it sounds a bit like it was also knowing who you didn't necessarily want in the space, not just who you did want, but actually saying no to certain things, or kind of having that sense of your own brand identity that some things aren't right for you, I suppose. James, with your business, I suppose there weren't that many companies like yours. Are there companies now?
Yeah, so there are a fair few online tutoring companies. I guess the whole industry's moved online in the last 6 months. But for us, when we were starting out, one of the big questions we asked each other was, what do we stand for? And the answer for us is that we stand for equality in education, and we meant it. So it's not just a case of for every 20 tutorials a parent buys, we'll give one back to someone who needs it. It's totally inbuilt in our brand. We have partnerships with schools that are funded for disadvantaged students, and that will always be core to our model. The second thing was understanding where the magic is. And for us, I guess people call it USPs. We thought there was something magical about the relationship between someone who's about to do something and someone who's recently done it. So there's no point in my mind in paying £100 for a PhD from Oxford to help a kid get a C in maths GCSE. It's pointless. They're not going to resonate with each other. They're not going to build a relationship. And it's just you're paying an enormous amount extra for something that's not needed. But there is something amazing about someone who has recently been through the exam, knows exactly the stresses, might have similar aspirations in their career to the person they're helping. And there was some secret sauce in that really carried us through. And the final point I would make here is that it's about really picking what you stand for and being distinctive with it. So for us, we were an online tuition company at a time where lots of parents said, I don't want an online tutor, or tutoring to me is someone coming to my house. And we could have made so much more revenue in the early days delivering in-person tuition. But we said, similar to your story, absolutely not. We believe the future is online, and we believe that even though it doesn't mean that in-person is bad, we can do certain things with online that you can't necessarily do in person, like record the lessons so that the students can watch them back, like having a virtual whiteboard that you can kind of both annotate in front of you rather than huddling around a notepad, like getting a better choice of tutor because you can choose the best tutor around the country rather than just the local one who's nearest to you. So those distinctive elements helped us build some real USPs in the space. They've carried through with us today.
Amazing. Karen, how about you?
So, like Gabby and James, I believe it all starts with one person who your business solves one problem for one person. Simplify it all down. What's the one problem you're solving for one person, and pinpoint that one person. And in my business, fortunately, it was me a few months earlier when so I'm trying to create everything what I would have wanted, and values as well, as you said, what you stand for, and of course, my business attracts. And it's very important to attract interfaith Jewish couples, Jewish brides who are converting, all kinds of other brides and couples. But at the heart, it's so much easier to deliver what you want and go all in on what you want when you're just thinking that you're doing it for one person. Because I think the issue is when you talk about saturation, so many brands and businesses are very vanilla. They just want to please everybody, and then you end up pleasing nobody. And you want people to really connect with you and connect with your brand. So if you can really define that one person, and even if you make up an avatar, everything you do is for that person. Your messaging, your branding, your products, your services, how you market yourself on Instagram. It just makes it so much easier, and you will still attract hundreds and hundreds of other people, but just have that sort of one person in mind who you would love to attract hundreds of that one type. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Like that focusing in. I think what you said about you being that person before is so useful as well. If you can find something in yourself that you kind of crave, and people always ask me about building online communities, and I always say try and build something that you'd really want to join, that you'd want to be part of, and then you've kind of you're on the way. Do you have any thoughts to share on clarity and how are there now a lot of competitor brands as well?
Yeah, I mean, for us, our mission was always to remove as much single-use plastic out of the environment. Our vision from day one was to remove 1 billion plastic bottles by selling cans within the next 10 years and inspire other brands and businesses to do the same thing. I knew probably about 3 years ago that Coca-Cola and Pepsi were putting water in cans. 2 consecutive times, I was told by people within their head offices that can of water was all over their presentations. It was difficult for us because we were the first. So we didn't really know who we were targeting. We just knew that we cared, but we didn't really know who would drink water out of a can. And when it sort of came to speaking to people, whether it was mentors or trying to find people to sort of get advice from, we sat down with one of the owners of one of the biggest drinks brands within the country, and they said to us, you'll never get into Tesco. It looks really good, but the plastic problem's not that bad. So for us, it was just sort of going on a journey that that we might not know our customer yet, but we'll learn it. But if we felt like this was something that we needed to do, we must be able to find others. From a USP perspective, for us, it's to be the most authentic brand out there. We've never sold a plastic bottle. Our cans are infinitely recyclable. And our third one, which I think is really, really important, is that we have got a resealable lid. We're the only people within the country that can get this resealable lid within water. From a convenience perspective, when we launched the brand, one of the massive hurdles with water is that you want to close your bottle and put it in your bag. Some people don't feel the need to reseal a can. But if you're buying a can of water from Tesco or Morrison's and all these places, you want like for like. So from a convenience perspective, you don't want to just open a 500ml can and then just you have to drink it there and then. So for us, our resealable lid is an imperative part of our brand.
Amazing. So we talked about clarity. I think being clear in your businesses is definitely super important, but then I think the next step is how do you actually translate that message to your audience? How do you communicate with them your brand values, what you're about, what they achieve by being part of your brand or your community? So in terms of kind of marketing, what are the best avenues that you guys have found for marketing the business? What's been the most effective? With the cans, was it Instagram, did you find, or I suppose you launched a few years ago, so perhaps it wasn't as big then.
Yeah, no, Instagram for sure. We, me and my friends, we're quite creative. So for us, we always wanted to create like an aspirational lifestyle brand. There are other competitors in the market that just thought, I'm just going to put water in a can. And they haven't been as successful at all because, some people care about the environment, and the reality is some people don't care about the environment. And if you're going to go from a plastic bottle that you're used to a can, I think a lot of the time, if you're an Evian drinker over like a bottle of Kirkland, the reality is you're being marketed to by Evian, a lifestyle product. So for us, it was very important to also create something that you were proud to hold. So Instagram, was a massive function of the business. In the early days, we would, I'd spend hours and hours on end reaching out to influencers and people that had, like-minded mentality. So people that were talking about sustainability, which when we first launched, not a lot of people cared about it. It was only sort of a few years in where everything changed. So Instagram and any form of social media was really, really helpful. For me personally, as sort of like a founder or a co-founder of the business, I found LinkedIn massively powerful. And I've sort of like an avid user of LinkedIn, and I've found that over the years, I've had a lot of traction through it.
It can often be quite overlooked because it's a little bit less sexy, but it actually is very useful. Gabby, tell me about marketing Huckletree. How did you kind of get the word out about the spaces and draw in members?
So I think for us, we look at it in that each one of our products has its own marketing channels. So we have Workspace, and within Workspace, we've got private studios for really large teams, all the way down to individual desks for entrepreneurs that are starting up. The way that you target each of those customers is going to be very, very different. So with the larger studios, it might be through brokers. And with the earlier stage, we try to get really creative. And one of the things that my marketing team have done recently is they have identified who the really exciting kind of early stage businesses are that we want to get involved with, to support. And they'll actually go out and kind of put their face on a flyer and outbound them and send them the content which they love and they really engage with. And then other programs of ours, like our educational programs, Instagram is a great tool for. So I think it's really difficult to nail it down into one specific channel that we use that has driven conversion for us. But I think the main thing that I would say is that word of mouth across all of our products has been the biggest, like the highest in terms of conversion. Because when you have somebody saying, I work here and I love being here, and it's much more than a desk, it's a community, that I think is so powerful.
Yeah.
And you can't put money behind that. It's invaluable.
Yeah, it's like delivering the core product has to be right, and then that, you're creating kind of marketing allies by doing that in itself. James, any advice on marketing?
So at my tutor, we bit off more than we could chew because we have so many different customers that we need to market to. So our acquisition for tutors, parents, students, school teachers, is all different. So to give you an example, with tutors, when we started off, there was a lot of campus ambassadors and jobs boards and stuff like that. And then gradually, it's been probably the most successful area in terms of actually building a brand. We get about 150,000 applications a year to tutor with us. And we can therefore be really selective and create an incredibly high quality supply base. When we look at parents, we do a lot of digital marketing. And in the beginning, we had to pay quite a lot for our leads because lots of parents signed up to us, got really excited, found out it was online and said, no, thank you. And now it's easier. But what we have is like a consumer sales team that speak to parents and understand their needs, sell the benefits of online, and that helps with the conversion. But when we did our actual branding exercise a couple of years ago, we were trying to figure out, is there any kind of unifying emotion or kind of proposition that we can speak to all our different customers in a similar way with? And it turned out that the uniting factor that we thought about was stress. Picking tutors for your child or going through the education system is stressful. Teachers are stressed trying to get good grades for their students. Parents are stressed finding the right sort of education solutions for their kids. And so in our marketing messaging, that was kind of a really big part. But yeah, we've explored loads of different channels. We've had partnerships. So we did a white label partnership with the Telegraph, and for a time there was Telegraph Tutors. That didn't work very well. We just did a promotion with Audi where we were advertising all their stores. So we do different things. But I think at its core, when thinking about marketing, it's thinking about your messaging and what the people you are selling to actually want and why they look to my tutor, for example, as a solution over a high-end agency or a retired teacher or a word-of-mouth recommendation from a friend.
It's interesting to hear you say that it took a while before you got to that combined message of stress. And I think it can take quite a while to work out what your marketing's like all about. And I see it often with entrepreneurs, they want to have all of that sorted straight away. And it can take quite a while to even figure out who your audience is. And it may surprise you. So actually you have to be quite flexible with the concept of marketing and kind of give yourself time. Karen, how did you I suppose word of mouth would have been a huge one for your business as well?
Word of mouth less so, because it's such a global audience being online. It's actually Instagram, and we create content on our blog, Smashing the Glass, 3, 4, 5 times a week. So you get embedded into SEO. People are searching Jewish wedding, up we come. But although we do perform well on Google, I am all about relationships. I love Instagram because you build such a sense of community. And we also utilize Facebook groups. So we are, although on the surface people engage with Smashing the Glass for wedding advice and guidance, actually at its heart what we've realized through the memberships particularly is it's actually all about identity and belonging and community. And we absolutely love that whole side of the brand and what we represent and the impact. And so Facebook groups, I would recommend to everybody, if you want to get to know your audience, if you want to build a real sense of engagement and people actually engage with your content and fans, Facebook groups are fantastic for creating community, which I think every brand now should be thinking about community, not just marketing.
Yeah, for sure. Community has become that big buzzword. I think it's the new authentic community. Finally, before we move on to some questions from the audience, I just want to touch on, should we say, the elephant in the room, which is COVID, and how your businesses have had to navigate what is an unexpected and unprecedented and challenging time. Gabby, obviously that had to be a huge challenge because you had to shut the spaces. Can you just talk to me about like how you adapted and how you're adapting now?
I was just going to say, I wish I was one of the boys, because I'm pretty sure that online tutoring and water are still things that people need
still need to
during
drink
COVID,
and
but
learn.
probably weddings and workspace less so. We actually never shut our spaces. No, so the government never said close offices. They always said work at home if you can, and if you can't, go to work, that famous line. So we never shut our spaces. In fact, if we would have been mandated to shut our spaces, we would have been better off because they would have had to give us rent relief, but they didn't, so we stayed open. But it was a shit show, if I can say that word.
You've said it, so we're fine.
And thank God, and I think probably the single thing that I've done the best myself over the years is hiring an incredible team around me, because if I was alone during this period, or if it was me and a bunch of people more junior than me, I don't think my business would have survived. So thankfully I have an incredible team, and we just basically spent the first 3 months of lockdown making sure that we could retain every single member that tried to hand in notice, working with them on flexibility, payment plans, discounting where need be, supporting them in their business, introducing them to investors if they were growing. And some of our spaces have been able to stay at sort of 90% occupancy. So I think overall, now that I feel like hopefully we're not going to have another lockdown, I'm breathing a bit of a sigh of relief, but it hasn't been easy at all.
That's very interesting, though, because sorry about the light show going on. It's quite fun. That is interesting because it comes back to what you were talking about at the start, about creating that connection to your audience. And I think had you have not done that groundwork and they didn't feel such pleasure in being in the spaces and they wanted to go to work, they may have cancelled their membership. So actually it comes back down to that connection and that brand loyalty.
100%.
Yeah, so you have to do the work. It's not something you can skip. Well, online tutoring, you probably had a slightly easier time, but I imagine it did throw up a lot of unexpected things as well.
Yeah, to an extent, we're pretty lucky. We made a bet early on, 7 years ago when we started, that online tutoring was going to become more mainstream. But when exams were cancelled and schools were closed, being at times quite an exam-focused solution for a lot of parents and schools, we were very worried. We didn't know what would happen. And for example, when lockdown happened and schools closed, we had a lot of our schools postpone their programs, which was scary. And we actually did all sorts of preventative measures at the time in anticipation of lost revenue. We offered actually a voluntary salary reduction scheme in which we offered people the equivalent in shares in the company and options, which I thought was hopefully quite a creative solution, and lots of people partook. Turns out we were lucky and we didn't need it. And actually, when lockdown started, we were a team of around 50 full-timers, and we had a base of sort of 15,000 tutors. We now have 100 full-timers, and so we've kind of doubled in size essentially during lockdown, which is a crazy, weird experience because most people who are new haven't actually met anyone in person. So we've done all these interview and onboarding processes remotely. But one of the big things that helped us, aside from the fact that we found out that parents do care about education with or without exams, was that the government for the first time created this budget called the catch-up premium, which is £1 billion budget, and it's a large proportion of it is designed to be used for tuition. So for the first time, the government have actually backed tuition in schools for disadvantaged students. And this is our bread and butter. This is what we kind of specialize in. We're the largest of our kind in the country. And we did the pilot for them to prove out this budget was worthwhile. And now it's being announced next week who's been selected to actually deliver this program. And there'll be a bunch of companies, which I hope we're in a good position for, but we haven't found out yet. And we've been scaling all summer to kind of meet this potential extra demand. So we've been lucky, half lucky and half, I guess, good positioning, and some of the big bets that we made early on have paid off to an extent. But yeah, it's also been challenging for our team because lots of people had their social kind of relationships tied up at work and they haven't been able to see each other. Some people are shielding for family members. Some people in our company have had COVID. A couple of people have suffered quite badly with it. So we kind of built this people function at the beginning of our hiring spree and put a really concerted effort into making sure that relationships were formed online, events were kind of taking place regularly, that our working practices were really like process driven, and just kind of put a lot of effort into that work from home life.
Also an incredible challenge for you to double in size and to be managing people remotely. That must have been, as a founder, you had to really step up to that challenge.
Yeah, I guess as a founder, I'm sure we can all testify to our roles like changing constantly. So you kind of always have this imposter syndrome where you feel a bit out of your depth. And I think that's definitely been true in the last 6 months. I guess one of the transitions that I'm trying to make is from, I guess, being a manager of people to a leader of the company. So there's lots of kind of talks where you have to be really crystal clear on where you're going, the story, what the next year is going to look like, and you're saying it from a point of general uncertainty. And so I've tried to balance kind of giving people a clear roadmap, but also showing vulnerability and uncertainty at the same time, which is not always the best or the easiest message to land.
It's a hard balance to strike between wanting to be a leader, but then also wanting to be human and vulnerable and show that, and it can be quite difficult.
I think they're both really interlinked. Like I'm not saying I'm on my leadership journey, like learning how to do it well. But vulnerability has always been like a big part of leadership for me. If you see someone who doesn't come across as human, then they're not going to resonate with you. You're not going to respect them. You're not going to want to follow them. And I've had some really hard conversations with team members whose parents have been unwell, who might be suffering from like mental health difficulties because they can't see their friends or they're living on their own, and navigating those as a leader. This is when people figure out whether they trust you and want to stay loyal to you.
Yeah, amazing. Karen, weddings.
Yeah,
A challenging time for weddings.
It's probably since weddings began, this has to be the most challenging time. So I've got 2 sets of audiences. I've got brides, lots of brides, and I've got lots of wedding vendors and brands. And both of them were hugely implicated all of a sudden. So we just went into full-on support mode. So we held weekly Zoom meetings, or not meetings, but kind of interactive chats, really, with our brides once a week to move them forward, keep, reassuring them, helping them with the latest guidance, what's the right decision for them, given the circumstances. And again, it was just all about that feeling connected. They just wanted to feel connected and supported. And then with the vendors, it was a case of helping them with getting their businesses through this period, maybe pivoting a little with some online ideas. Whatever it was, I just wanted to provide that. That was a pivot. Like, we don't provide weekly support and coaching and all that kind of stuff, but you just kind of went into what we had to do. And then sort of after 2 to 3 months, once lockdown eased and it became the new normal, we realized that what we're providing for the brides, this sense of community and feeling connected and really friendships in a world now where you can't really make new friends, we realized that we want to provide this for all Jewish women, not just brides. So our line at Smashing the Glass is it's your Jewish wedding, your way. And now we're doing your Jewish life, your way. So we've always had a membership for life after the wedding, a Jewish lifestyle membership. But we've now gone into the sort of content space, the free content. So we've got a new Instagram account called Your Jewish Life. You should all be following it. We've got lifestyle content on our platform every Sunday. And we've obviously going all in on our lifestyle membership as well. So we'd never have had time to explore that and build it out because everything's so crazy pre-pandemic. So we've had the time to actually explore something that's going to be really impactful and really exciting. So yeah, some silver linings.
Yeah, amazing. Food and drink, I feel like that was the safest bet because we were all drinking and eating more, but were there challenges?
You'd like to think it. It's been really tough. I think that, I say to a lot of people that Canna Water didn't start properly until about 2 years ago. We spent the first sort of 3.5 years trying to convince people that this was a thing. And then good old David Attenborough did Blue Planet, and overnight, literally just things went mental. So it took us years to get into, a lot of places. But we really rely on places being open. So where the difficulty is, we spent so much time trying to get into, we're the water at Buckingham Palace, we're the water at Lord's Cricket Ground, Amazon's head office, and all of these places that like London Zoo, we really, really rely on these places. And that all closed overnight. So, in 2018, we probably did about 1 million cans. 2019, we did over 10 million cans. So we really scaled up within a year. And then overnight, it just went, and a lot of it, shut down. We were still selling, in Tesco's, Morrison's, WH Smith's, all of these places that we sell in, but a lot of people weren't buying single cans. No one was going to the mill deal. All the universities were closed. So we had to adapt. So we weren't on Amazon before. We never really saw Canna Water as a D2C business. We didn't really look at it as, something where someone would want to order, loads of crates to their house. But we launched on Amazon, and within, I think about 3 months, we've basically done more volume that we've done online, had done online for 5 years, in 3 months. So Amazon has been a massive, massive help. But yeah, it's been a big struggle. And we do rely on a lot of these places, reopening. But I truly believe that from a health and sustainability perspective, people will be thinking a lot more about the planet after this. I speak to a lot of people, and as I said at the beginning, I'm not someone who grew up really caring as much about sustainability, but I talk to a lot of people who, are starting to think more about it, whether they've seen, a David Attenborough documentary, or they've started to notice something because of something they've seen on Facebook. It is definitely something that is that a lot more people are interested in. So we've basically just been planning post-COVID, just our post-COVID takeover, which is, really, really exciting. I'm very excited to work on it.
Yeah, I'm excited for things to feel a bit more normal as well. Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you coming and speaking to us today about your experiences. We've got a few minutes so people can ask questions, and we also have some questions, I believe, Joe, from the live stream. So yeah, if anyone would like to ask any questions to our audience about anything we've talked about tonight, and if not, I have tons more questions, so we're absolutely fine. Don't be shy, anyone.
Just put your hand up and I'll bring you the...
People hate to be first. Yeah. It's always breaking a seal. It's fine. You can take your mask. She can take her mask down, right?
Yeah, thank you. I was curious about, I think a lot of things that all of you have touched on have been about the naivety you might have at the start, or imposter syndrome that you mentioned, and things like this where you have those nerves or fears about moving forward with an idea. Off the back of that, I was interested to know what goals or objectives you had right at the start. I mean, your businesses all sound hugely successful, so maybe now your long-term plan has changed. But with that first idea, did you guys have any idea or even put a number or a figure on where you wanted to get to? And how did you manage or then reevaluate those expectations?
Interesting. Does anyone want to jump in?
Well, I will. Well, for us, our objective was obviously to, as I said before, to remove 1 billion plastic bottles from the environment. But I think everything changes literally every day. Every sort of, first of all, it was to get into Selfridges. We did that. Then it was to get into Tesco's, and then we did that. And I think every day things change. But for us, it's just to educate people, really. I enjoy educating people on, better alternatives to a plastic bottle. But from our first brochure or business plan, it is so different. So the naivety and that fear really sort of got us to that next stage every time. So yeah, it was definitely a scary sort of, and it really is a massive naivety, and I hear that from so many people that do a deep dive into something that they're not so comfortable doing, but they do it. But that really is I guess the fun of it.
I'll go next. So because I started my business on maternity leave, I started it as a project to keep my brain ticking. It wasn't about monetary goals. It was just, I got this idea, I think it's needed. And I'm a creator at heart. I wanted to create something new, my own corner of the internet. And I would say that for me, even to this day, it's always been about who I'm serving, my audience. I want to give them the best of everything, the best content, the best guidance, the best advice, and everything else follows. Like I say, I think it really is about the audience first. And there's that NAF phrase, profit follows passion. Just enjoying what you're doing every day. And I suppose I should think even now more in financial terms, but I'm always about the creative projects and the audience, and relationships is key.
For me, I think it started with really thinking about what I wanted out of entrepreneurship, because I always wanted to run a business, and so that was a non-negotiable for me. Financial projections, of course, have to be done when you raise money from people, but I think, like Josh was talking about, like your pitch deck was a brochure essentially, and sometimes you can sell an idea and a vision in those early days more than you can the product itself. And for me, I think I was selling the problems in the tutoring industry, the size of the market, the depth of the problem, and just a better solution. And so whether I said I was going to be earning 100 million in 5 years' time, those projections are just like, you make some reasonable assumptions and they change, like you get a lot wrong. Putting pen to paper, investors don't tend to pay too much attention to that. They look at, is this a good team? Is this an attractive market? Are you solving a real problem? And is your go-to-market strategy believable? And then it's about getting to the next stage, showing some traction, getting some early users. And I'm a big fan of the idea of getting a small number of users to absolutely love you and contribute to the feedback loops and really give you an insight into where to go next. And then you raise larger amounts of money and put it all into marketing. Like, it's not worth spending hundreds of thousands or whatever on marketing in the early days until you really figure out exactly where your fit is in the market.
Anything you'd like to add, Gabby?
I think for me, I really, when I started Huckletree, it was really because I was passionate about this space where different people could kind of come together, whereas they would otherwise be working alone from home or, from their own space. So if that was it for me, and if it was just me running this one space, this one and only space for the next 6 years of my life, I was really happy with that. And then that was naive also, because then obviously, the minute you go and you raise money, investors are not going to be happy with that. And so suddenly they started talking about, you're going to have 20 spaces across London and they're all going to, launch themselves on the profit that the previous ones have generated, and then you're going to IPO. And I was like, okay, IPO. So I never really had a clue of what I was doing, and I just kind of always went through it and went with the motions and kept learning as I was going, really. And now we're much better about saying, these are our financial targets for the year and this is how we're going to get there. But in the beginning, it was just kind of the roller coaster journey of being an entrepreneur and learning to be an entrepreneur and figuring out as I was going along.
Do we have any more questions? Lady in the white top at the front.
This is, I guess, for the boys, because you both spoke about people saying to you, like, that the cans weren't going to work, or like that people didn't want online tutors. So I guess my question is, what made you believe, even though people were telling you that they didn't want this or that people wouldn't want it, that is what people would want? What kind of made you not change your mind or say, this is the feedback, let's pivot towards that and say, actually, people are going to want this, we just have to find them?
From my perspective, one of the beauties of delivering tuition online is that you can record the sessions. So actually, when we were testing things out, we were watching we were allowed to watch some of the sessions. And what we discovered is that the relationship between the tutor and the student compared to what was like traditional tutoring with qualified teachers was just so different. It was like bonds were created, trust was created, there was like a fun and engaging energy to it. And so the kind of relationship in the near-peer model, we call it, so someone close in age, was the first step, the first non-negotiable. The online delivery actually wasn't necessarily because we were saying everything's going to be online in 10 years. It was actually more because to access this magic, students need to do it online because university students don't want to go to people's houses and they don't necessarily have cars and they can't travel around. So it was like a win-win. The students were earning money, earning more than they would earn in a clothes shop, sitting in their university like dorms or homes. And for students, they were getting something more fun that was complementing what was going on in class, but wasn't like something that they'd say to their parents, please don't make me do this, like I'm so bored. So I think just observing the actual product in action gave us the insight and the belief.
It is belief. I think that it literally every day we would have people laughing down the phone at us. Sort of, it was really, really horrible for the first few years. Most weeks I would just want to sort of just leave and just didn't want to do it. And same with the other guys. But I think that there were moments I'll never forget. I was standing at Whole Foods sampling, and this woman came over and asked my autograph because she couldn't believe that she was so like blown away by what we were doing for the environment. And it was just small things like that where it just kept us going. And I think I had the other boys to lean on. We just really wanted it to work. We had so much passion and so much belief in the product. And at the beginning, it was difficult because it had never been done before. But over time, more and more people started to sort of warm to it, and we would turn up at train stations at 5 o'clock in the morning, just handing out cans to people, and people would sort of take a sip of the water and be like, "Oh my God, it tastes like water." And it would, over time, people started to sort of become familiar with it. And for us, we became just more and more sort of positive and drawn to, this could work, and it doesn't matter what people say. We're going to make this work. And I think that it was that was a key element to it.
Lady at the back.
My question is more for Karen and Gabriella. I wondered, because you're both mothers, you both run your own business, you're working from home in COVID, how have you managed to balance everything and keep your business going and manage this whole situation with families, with husbands, with everything going on, and make your days productive? And yeah,
that's a very good question.
Late nights. Genuinely, at the beginning when we were homeschooling, there wasn't any time in the day to work. So it really was an hour here, an hour there, and some late nights. And it's all fueled from passion and just loving what I do and wanting to make it work and support my audience. And I just think one thing I have learned over the years, because I do obviously love the flexibility of being able to take any day off I want to, go to my kids' sports day or whatever it is without asking a boss. So having that flexibility, but I do think you have to protect your time. So work time is work time. It cannot be, if you end up being that malleable about it, you lose it. So it's a real balance. There isn't an answer as such, but I just think if you love what you do, you find the time, and I'm not sure I can say more than that. Don't know if Gabby's got a better answer.
No, I was just thinking about my answer. It's a tricky one to answer because I don't think there's nothing uniform that everybody would have done in the same way, and every parent, mother and father, because it must have been equally as hard for the fathers. I know my husband wanted to kill my whole family pretty much every day. Everybody would have done it their own way and found their own balance. I think for me, I didn't have the choice. I couldn't not work in the daytime. I had a team of, then at the beginning of COVID, 80 people, and they relied on me every single day for all the various meetings that would happen during the day. So I kind of, it's horrible to say, but had to ignore my children as much as I could during the working day and come home to them as I would come home to them for bath time at 6:30 p.m. and have the evenings with them as I would do normally. So I just think everybody has found their own operating rhythm that has worked for them, but it's been really, really hard with kids at home. I mean, hasn't been healthy for my relationship with my children, especially my eldest.
May we also add in that James is a new father? Do you have anything to
It's exhausting. Yeah, I think lots of what you guys have said has resonated, but for me, we moved in with my in-laws in the first kind of part of COVID, which we were really lucky to be able to do. But I thought as we were kind of new parents, it was valuable to have family support because I knew that I would be working in the day, and my wife was obviously, wanting her own support system. For me, I think it resonates about shutting yourself off in a room and making sure that it's a non-negotiable to have your working day and then you come home from work. I think I do a similar thing, but it's very easy to get dragged in at lunchtime to playtime or whatever. But it's been a lovely experience. I can't complain about it. Just not much sleep.
Can I just say it's really nice that you moved in with your in-laws? My husband would never move in with my parents.
I have lovely in-laws, so I'm lucky.
Are they watching?
Hello. No, I don't.
They're really lovely. Do we have any more questions? Lady in the red top.
I have a question about the earliest stages, or I don't know, it might have happened at later stages, but was there a point where you felt like you needed to go and get professional advice, business advice, or did you get advice from those around you? I know you mentioned family help, but was there a point, because I feel like sometimes as a non-business owner, it sounds like such a scary world, and I'm just wondering about that.
One thing I was going to say, going back to your launch question, I meant to, when others are speaking, you're thinking, I'll mention that too. And it was one of the things I meant to say was ask for help and have a mentor is vital. You absolutely don't know the answers and you need, that external advice. And I talked about my membership that I launched a couple of years ago. When I first launched it, it failed. I thought I was going to break the internet and be a millionaire by the end of the year. And it flopped, even though I've got an enormous audience. I didn't get it right. But I, like you guys said about belief, I really believed in it. I really believed in it. And I invested in a mentor and a course and all kinds of stuff and relaunched it, and it's best thing we've ever done business-wise and continues to be. And yeah, I think it's a must, I would say, even if it's a family friend or someone that's ahead of you that you connect with, 100%.
Did anyone else have very good professional support?
Just a couple of comments on that. I think absolutely it's great to get good professional support and help, but my learning from early on was that, like in the beginning, I was a sponge and I would go to everyone and ask them about everything, and I'd meet all these entrepreneurs of businesses I'd heard of and just be blown away and a bit starstruck. And when I kind of looked back at some of the conversations, I realized that actually people have very specific experiences. So there's some general things that you can get advice about, but it goes back to the point about asking the right questions, because a lot of what people have experienced can become like their Bible or their Torah, and it's kind of set in stone in their mind exactly what's right and wrong, and they can be quite dogmatic with it. So I learned to take the right sort of advice from the right sort of people, so very relevant skill set and expertise, taking it with a pinch of salt as well, knowing that actually my environment, my business is slightly different. So always overlay it with like your experiences in the market and your understanding, but absolutely seek help. I've definitely had a lot of great help over the years.
And it can get confusing if you listen to too many people, and you can kind of muddy the waters and lose your sense of clarity and direction with things as well. Do we have any more questions?
So my question was, in terms of the very early stages of your business, how did you find and like how did you raise the capital? Just because I'm kind of lost at the minute and I just don't know where to start.
Good question. I think James and Gabby both raised, right? Advice on raising?
I think it's well, there's so many different kind of areas that you could go to for fundraising. So it really depends on what your objectives are for your business and who can best support you through that. If you don't have any connections for fundraising, and I'm genuinely not saying this because it's a Huckletree product, it's not a pitch, but I think there are lots of accelerator programs out there that can help you and can help you get yourself ready and can put you in contact with the right investors. And I also think that those accelerator programs shouldn't cost you anything. They shouldn't cost you money and they shouldn't cost you equity in your business, which is your most valuable asset. But they can open up communities for you and make the right introductions.
So we've been fortunate to go through quite a few different funding rounds, and they've taken different forms. So we started off with individuals and then ended up with an institution and several institutions. My main advice is keep going, because you're going to get a lot of no's. Your product could be the best thing in the world, about to take off, and you will get a lot of people messing you around, wasting your time, not giving you answers, and I experienced a lot of that in the early days. I was fortunate in that I had a little bit of money to invest in my own business, just from a previous business at university. Not a huge amount of money, but it just gave me the ability to create a bit of a story. So I'd advise you to apply for business grants, speak to angel introducers, go to accelerators, just try everything and expect no's and learn from each one, get feedback. Don't take all the feedback to heart. Think about exactly which feedback to implement and which to leave. And it's a test and learn process, just like starting a business. But it's hard. It is hard. And there are lots of good principles that we don't have time to get into. But yeah, it's expect a slog, basically.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, I've found fundraising to be an exhausting experience. We were quite fortunate at the beginning that we found some, like-minded individuals that wanted to invest. They loved the product, but I think for us, going for a second round, it's been really, really challenging. Just because it's about, you don't want to give away your baby to someone that sort of doesn't care, and I think that's the scariest sort of part. For Can of Water, we're looking for a strategic partner that actually, cares. It'd be great to sell to someone like Coca-Cola, and a lot of people will be like, why don't you sell to Coca-Cola? But really, is Coca-Cola as the biggest pollutant in the world, are they the right sort of partner? So I think a lot of these things sort of go through your mind, but very, very similar to James. A lot of people will say no. A lot of people won't understand, but don't let that stop you. Throughout lockdown, we created a deck that the whole team at Can of Water is extremely proud of, and I think that if you know that if you're very passionate about your business, and as was mentioned before, you've got your goals and objectives, and you're passionate about it. Go to these accelerators, do research online about the type of individual that you want to invest in your company, and just sort of go for sort of full steam ahead, really.
Fantastic. We've got time for one more question.
Again. Listening to your stories, I think it's really interesting. We've got kind of two examples here. James, you mentioned you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and that was non-negotiable, whereas Karen, you sort of started the idea for yourself, a kind of personal project, and it went from there. Kind of an open question about, my mind kind of screams, isn't it a little bit, I don't know, maybe I'm skeptical of, I want to be an entrepreneur, but I don't have an idea. Your experiences with that versus kind of, I guess, more of an alternative route. Not really a question, just an open topic, because I'm really interested in it.
So I always had in mind for it to be a business. It was never a hobby project or anything like that. I spotted the gap. I didn't have the pressure because I was on maternity leave. So I had my business, which, my branding business, which I presumed I was going to go back to after maternity leave. But then because this took off, I put that to one side. I just think it doesn't have to be an incredible idea. It has to be something what is the problem that you're solving, and why, and research people, to get real answers. Research. When I say research actual people who are going to give honest answers, not friends and family, but your actual target market. And I would say, like I said earlier, profit follows passion. So if there's something you're willing to work on 24/7, 3 a.m. in the morning during COVID lockdowns, you've got a better chance of succeeding, rather than a great idea that you actually don't really want to spend your time on. Does that help?
I didn't mean to belittle it by calling it a personal project. No. I love Smashing Glass, regularly read it. I'm not engaged.
For me, when I say that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, it wasn't the fact that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur that kind of meant that I would be a great one, but it did give me one particular skill, which is because I loved the creative element of starting something up. It kind of instilled this resilience in me that I would stick at it, almost probably for fear of having to go and work for someone else at the end of it. So for me, entrepreneurship is creativity, it's freedom. I'm enjoying more and more the kind of leadership element as well, and being able to try and give a clear vision to people that people want to follow. I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. It's been a roller coaster. This has not been like a straight line journey at all, and don't expect that in business. Entrepreneurship, I think, is not for everyone. It's a really tough journey. We've had some luck over the last 6 months, but it could have easily gone the other way, and we would have had to channel our inner resilience and kind of go about it in a different way and pivot. And actually, like the last 6 months for me have probably been the most exhausting of my entrepreneurial journey, because we have dealt with like a lot of pains from a point of luck in that our business was growing, but it's when it's yours to lose and you feel like you're lucky, there's also a bit of a responsibility to do well by people and maintain jobs. And, if you're growing fast, you want to do it sustainably as well.
I'm just going to add in my thoughts, not that you asked for them, but I'm going to add them anyway. I wrote a book which is out in January, which you can buy. I wrote a book that's coming out in January, where I interviewed 150 female entrepreneurs. Ones that had raised loads of money, ones that had done it around the kitchen table. And one of the things I found most interesting was a lot of people said, I just wanted to be a founder, but I didn't quite have the idea yet. And some advice that I learned from a lot of the women that I interviewed was to go work in a startup, because they found that they realised quite quickly whether or not they liked the culture and the kind of madness of it and the chaos and stuff like that. And some people said that actually after that they realised it wasn't for them, and then other women actually had an idea whilst they're at a startup, something kind of caught their eye. But you can also kind of learn on the job, and you're kind of learning on someone else's time as well. So if you don't feel quite ready to jump into that journey, I think working for a small business can be like a useful resource. That was my 2 cents. Thank you very much. Buy my book in January. Guys, thank you so much for tonight. I found this so thrilling and exciting to have you here in person. And thank you for being so open and honest, sharing your advice and your journeys and stories. We have another event coming up of this kind. So if you've enjoyed tonight, on the 2nd of November, Joe? 2nd of November, which is a next in the series. So you can come along to that. And we wish you all very well.
Thank you so much, Angelica. That evening was really, really insightful and really informative at this moment. Thank you, Josh, Karen, James, and Gabriella. Hearing stories live about resilience and hope and changing your course in response to a pandemic like this is so inspirational at this moment. And we love sharing stories here at JW3. as Angelica mentioned, we have our next How They Made It Through on the 2nd of November with a whole new array of Jewish entrepreneurs sharing their stories. Please check it out and join us either in the building or online. Thanks once again to Genesis Philanthropy Group for supporting this wonderful series, and thank you all for coming this evening. Good night.